Brenda Wootton was a Cornish poet and folk singer and was seen as an ambassador for Cornish tradition and culture in all the Celtic nations and as far as Australia and Canada. Early life and career. She was born in London, but grew up in the fishing village of Newlyn. She began her musical career as a young schoolgirl, singing in village halls throughout the remote communities of West Cornwall. Wootton became active on the folk scene in the early 60s, helping to keep the Cornish folk song tradition alive for many years. Her early albums were recorded on Cornwall's Sentinel label, often with her singing partners John the Fish, Robert Bartlett, and later with guitarists Pete Berryman, Mike Silver, Al Fenn, David Penhale and Chris Newman. Many of her songs were composed by Richard Gendel. Her repertoire over the years covered folk, rock, blues, jazz and even hymns, but she is best remembered for her Cornish standards, such as Lamorna, The White Rose, Camborne Hill, The Stratton Carol and the ballads Maud on Now, Tamer, Silver Net and Lioness. She was equally at home when singing in Cornish, Breton or English, and was as famous in Brittany, which she visited regularly, as she was in her native Cornwall. She opened her own folk club, the Pipers Folk Club, at St Buryan, Cornwall, and appeared in the first ever Lorient into Celtic festival in Brittany. Wootton was a member of the Gorseth Kerno, where she was known by her bardic name of Gwilyn Gwavis. In her later years, she became well known in Cornwall as a presenter for BBC Radio Cornwall, where she hosted the popular weekly request show Sunday Best, until her death in 1994. She was also the honorary president of Radio Beacon, the hospital radio service for St Lawrence's Hospital in Bodmin. Wootton died in March 1994, aged 66, after a long illness, at her home in Penzance. Legacy. In 1994, Wootton's daughter Sue Luscombe published a book of her lyrics, comic verses, ballads and stories entitled Pantomime Stew. In 2010 it was announced that a previously unreleased audio tape had been discovered of a concert given by Wootton in June 1984 at the Bobino Theatre Music Hall in Paris with Camborne Town Band and local musicians Ray Roberts, Dave Freeman and the renowned British acoustic guitarist Chris Newman. Analog master tapes of the concert were discovered by John Knight, her recording engineer, in his studio in Cornwall, and were then digitally mastered and edited for the new album. Knight commented at the time, Brenda wanted to have a personal record of the concert. She never released a live album. I don't think it was intended for release, but now I think we have the potential there, adding, ideally we would love to release it on CD with some of the stories from the tour. Subsequently a new CD, All of Me, was released. The recording is unique as all 19 tracks were previously unheard and represents a fitting tribute to Wootton, performing at what was considered to be the peak of her international career. A 16-page souvenir booklet, researched by Gloria Knight, is included featuring unpublished photographs, many from Wootton's own private collection, recordings, singles and EPs. Bacchus's Celtic Styles Britanniques Le Chant du Monde 100,406, cm 650, 1981. Tamer, Discast 1061, 1986. Tamer, Waiting for the Title Rose, Kenavo Dujanafli. Albums Brenda at Buryan, Live at Pipers Folk Club Street, Buryan 1967 with John the Fish. Pipers Folk, with John the Fish and Amp, Pipers Folk, 1968. Pastures and Amp, Cream, with John the Fish, Sentinel Records, Sens 1006, 1971. Way Down to Lamorna, Sentinel, Sens 1056, 1972. Crowdy Crawn, with Richard Gendel, Sentinel, Sens 1016, 1973. Pamplemousse, with Robert Bartlett, Barclay, 1973. No Song to Sing, with Robert Bartlett and guest Alex Utterson on piano. Sentinel, Sens 1021, 1974. Tin in the Stream, with Robert Bartlett. Stockfish, 1974. Starry Gazy Pie, with Robert Bartlett. Sentinel, Sens 1031, 1975. Children Singing, with Richard Gendel. Sentinel, Sens 1036, 1976. Carillon, Transatlantic Records, TRA 360, 1979. Boyan. Cornishman, with David Penhale and Richard Gendel. Burlington Records, Burlo 05, 1980. La Grande Cornualles, Burlington Records, Burl 007, 1980. Guavas Lake, with the Four Lanes Male Choir. Burlington Records, Burlo 08, 1980. Lioness, with David King. RCA Place 70299, 1982. My Land, RCA Place 70234, 1983. Becom Brenda, Discas AZ 494, 1985. Tamer, Discas AZ 505, 1986. The Voice of Cornwall, Celtia Musique KMCD 67, 1996. All of Me, with Brenda's Trio and Camborne Town Band. Label Night Design Cat. No KDBWAOMO001 Deck. 2010.